Alright, hello everyone, it's Chris Shelley, and we're doing another iRacing Oval Tips video. This video will be on learning new tracks and developing a process for figuring out how to drive certain car and track combinations. We're focusing more on the track aspect. I'll probably be doing a follow-up video on learning different cars, but yeah, let's get started here. Alright, so if you've watched my iRacing beginner tips video on cornering and driving inputs, you know there are a few things you need to consider when going through a corner. And those things are the corner entry, the center, and the corner exit. So just as a review here, corner entry, as you're seeing right here, is me lifting off heading into this turn. You know, you're not going to be able to take it at full speed, so you have to lift off, get the car some grip to actually steer through the corner. This will depend on different types of tracks, how much you need to do. So that's speedways like this, especially in the ARCA car, you do not need to brake. But I'll be going over some different tracks later in this video where you will need to be braking to make sure you get a good corner entry. The next step, as you can see right here, is the center of the corner. So this is when you start picking the throttle back up, and you want to match that grip level that you have with rotating while increasing your car's speed by getting more on the gas. So that will start getting you some more momentum after the corner, but you don't want to overdo it in the gas because you might run out of front or rear grip, and you're still in the middle of the corner, so you need to make sure you're still rotating. Now, leading into this is the corner exit. Here you can see at this track, I'm going up to the full throttle, coming off the corner, and then letting it track back out. Those are the inputs you need to focus on. I'll be addressing those again throughout the video, but that's the general idea of what you need to be doing. Alright, but if you've seen my videos, you know this is nothing new. I've already described this in the street stock at USA International Speedway, and you should already know these by now and be getting used to going through the stages of the corner. What we're going over this video is learning tracks and adapting to different tracks. So for Chicagoland specifically, we can break it down into a few factors, and this will apply for every track actually, at least for every oval track that's paved. Okay, so the first few things you need to consider when looking at a track is the cornering radius. So you can see Chicagoland is a 1.5 mile track, very wide sweeping turns, and then even the back stretch is not even straight. You get a lot of just flowing and not a whole lot of sharp abrupt turning necessary. This is what makes Chicagoland pretty fast and fun to drive, and it's just a lot about keeping up your momentum, especially in the stock cars. So when you have wider corners like this, where you really get to let the car smoothly progress through, you need to consider the fact that you can usually use more throttle and need less brake. Your turning is going to be very smooth. You don't need to slow the car down too much usually, and you'll be able to just keep up a lot of speed through the corners. Now this will change depending on the corner radius. So if you're at a sharper track, like say USA International Speedway, 3/4 mile track that is a lot more narrow, you'll be needing to brake, you'll need to have a lot more steering angle, etc., because you're just having to turn harder. Next thing to consider are your entry points and your lifting points. So here you can see me. You want to make sure you maximize your cornering radius and follow a good racing line. You probably heard of the racing line before, and I believe I touched on it a little bit earlier in earlier videos. But you want to go from the outside of the track on corner entry down to the center, and then you want to get right down the bottom of the center and hit your apex, and then track back out towards the wall. That's the general process and a general racing line for almost every track, and it typically applies at least when you are not considering how a track evolves during a race. So you just want to follow that general concept. Going high on entry, bringing the car all the way down towards the bottom as low as you can in the corners, in the apex, and then bringing it right back up towards the wall on exit. That's how you can carry the most speed conventional, assuming that all other factors are the same. Your lifting point, you want to lift about when you're about to turn. You don't want to be yanking the car in too hard and then turning. See how I wait to lift before I get a lot of my steering angle going, and that helps me get into the corner better. Of course, it doesn't need to be absolutely yes or no inputs, as in the fact that you don't need to snap off and then snap your steering wheel to the left and then snap it back. You want to be smooth with these, as I've discussed in earlier videos. So after this corner entry, you want to arc it out, lift off in the corner, rolling back onto the throttle in the center. You need to know what trajectory or what path you need to take through the corner. So here, I'm trying to find the apex, and because of this being sort of a quad, I guess not a quad oval, a D-shaped oval, turns 1 and 2, you want to apex late, and turns 3 and 4, you typically want to apex in the center, or even at least earlier than you would have in turns 1 and 2. So if you see here, I'm trying to apex right around there, and I get on the throttle earlier, not only because there's enough grip, but I'm still making my way down the racetrack to meet that apex. Once you hit that apex, generally speaking, you want to be getting all the power that the tires can handle, and you just want to bring it off the corner. Right now, this car has a lot of grip and just a really wide track, so I can have it full throttle. At some tougher tracks or when you're on worn tires, you might not be able to do that. Same process through here in 3 and 4, just applying what I've just recently said. Now to round out the most important concept, I would say beyond the basic fundamentals we already talked about, it would be other considerations for the track's surface and construction. So Chicagoland Speedway does not have progressive banking, but it is a very wide track, and it's 1.5 miles that tends to rubber up quickly, and you need to move around the racetrack as the track evolves during a race. So you may need to adjust your line besides just completely running the bottom and the center of the corners the entire race. And this becomes even more important to consider when you're learning tracks, especially when there's progressive banking, where you might have flatter banking on the bottom of the track and higher banking up on the top. You also need to consider whether there are bumps in certain lines that you're trying to run that you might want to avoid to make sure you hold onto the car better and keep more speed. Alright, that being said, let me go to my hot lap run here, and I'll start breaking down my approach to Chicagoland specifically. So as we look at this, as I start my qualifying run, this is just a test session, but I ran it like it was a qualifying run. The way I break down Chicagoland is a wide 1.5 miles, 18 degrees of banking, so it's fairly good amount of grip, but not as much grip as possible. Very sweeping corners, so I like to be very slow with my inputs and how I lift off the throttle, steer it, and then come back onto the throttle. So here's my hot lap at Chicagoland. Alright, so here we are. This is Iowa Speedway. Not the 1.5 miles like Chicagoland. It's 7/8 of a mile, about 12 to 14 degrees of banking, progressive in the banking in the corners. So as you go further up in the corners, you can see there's a little bit more grip just because the track itself will be pushing you towards out and helping you turn. Pushing you in rather and helping you turn. So a big thing to understand about this track another D-shaped oval, so it's somewhat similar to Chicagoland in the sense that you want to kind of mid to late apex turn 2, and then really like middle apex turn 3 generally, 3 and 4. This is just because of the geometry of the track. You want, if you were wanting a perfect geometric racing line, the smoothest path through the corner would be a later apex in turn 2 and an earlier / middle apex in 3 and 4. Cornering radius is tighter, it's a smaller track, so you're carrying a lot less speed. You even have to brake a little bit in the corner, heading into the corner, and as the race goes on, your tires get hot and they wear out. You'll have to brake a little bit more, slow down the car a bit more to get it to rotate through these corners. Banking wise, and also the track transitions are really important to acknowledge here. Chicagoland had some corner transitions that you could really lean into a little bit, but Iowa is a lot more extreme with that, especially coming off of turn 2. So when your car is getting sucked up into the track like this, where the track has a hump, you'll get a lot of grip heading up this hill, but you'll start to lose it at the very top. That's just because the way physics works, where the normal force from the ground is pushing the car up or down, depending on the shape of the surface. So you want to take advantage of that by knowing you can get more rotation out of the car coming off the corner exit, because it's going to be sticking harder into the track. Progressive banking does mean that if you go further up the track, you'll find more grip, because in a similar sense as I just explained with the hills and crests on a track, you have more banking that is going to be providing force, helping the car turn towards the left here. So you'll have more grip, more forces pushing the car to turn on the higher parts of the track than you would in the bottom. One thing to consider about doing this is that typically is not a geometric racing line, which means, and because you're accessing more grip and more loading through the tires, you're wearing them out a little bit more than you would if you're just running a geometric racing line. So that is another thing to consider. But let's take a look at my corner entry and exit. Again, apex right around the center of the corner for 3. Notice how I turned way out and then come down to the apex and then come all the way back up to the top. You can use this progressive banking to help you really a lot on entry and exit of the corner. Same idea for 1 and 2, except I go for a bit of a later apex, wider entry into turn 1, apex right around turn 2. It's not super late apex for turn 2, just because, as I said, there's a lot of grip to help you rotate and carry speed coming off of turn 2, so you can just really go for it. And yeah, those are the things I would say to focus on. Understanding how the geometric racing line can be deviated from here, this track, but also how it can cost you if you're not being careful with your tires. Alright, let's go to a hot lap. Alright, here we go. This is a qualifying run, Iowa. Not the fastest lap time, but it's still fairly quick, 24.3s on these laps. Take a look. So learning these tracks is about combining the car control tips I talked about, the driving input and cornering tips, and applying them to different scenarios and different settings for corner radius, banking, corner entry, corner exit, how to understand, just sling all those together. Alright, so here we are at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. This will be the last track I talk about in this video as far as how to learn how to drive tracks. So again, we're going to go back to those 3 factors of corner radius, track surface and geometry as far as banking and corner transitions, and then just understanding grip levels and how to follow and or deviate from the geometric racing line. So you can see New Hampshire is very flat. It's, I believe, 2 to 7 degrees of banking, 2 degrees down the bottom lane, and then 7 degrees up second groove on and upward. So you have a bit of a choice on whether you want to go for more of a geometric racing line, or you want to stay higher and use more banking. Typically, there's more grip on the second groove, and there's actually a very track-specific aspect to it where right down against the seam, there happens to be a lot of grip in that part of the surface. But a lot of drivers also prefer to diamond through these corners. I haven't talked about any diamond approach tracks in this video, so I'll go over that fairly quickly. The general idea is that in a normal geometric racing line, you go a very smooth corner. So you'll normally, in a geometric racing line, you want to stick all the way around the seam, and that isn't a very fast approach for this type of track. But you can also diamond the corner like I'm doing, which you may see in NASCAR at several tracks, including this one, is where you go in and you let the car slide up a little bit. You turn a little bit sharper in the center of the corner so you can have a straighter exit. I've noticed that this seems to be fairly good for hot laps, but you have more potential to conserve your tires if you run a more conservative line where you're not using the diamond approach. Again, this track is about finding those clipping points as well and defining your racing line based off of those. So I brake about at these 2 markers here. You find a reference point to start your braking, start your turn in, find where you want to apex, whether you want to have a single apex as in a conventional geometric line, or you want to double apex it with the diamond approach. Notice how at all of these tracks, I was taking the approach of not overloading the car with too many inputs at once. Like I said before, car control and driving inputs and cornering techniques are very important to understand how to learn and drive new racetracks. The only other specific thing about this track is that you do have to shift. There are some tracks like that. I believe New Hampshire is one of them. For certain car track combinations, like Phoenix with, I believe, like the trucks, I've noticed you have to shift there, or it can be beneficial to shift there. Still the same generic concepts apply. It's just about knowing how to blip the car so you can get through those gears. But again, clipping points, know where to turn in, figure out where to turn for an apex, and then know when you can gas up the corner and get that good run off the corner. Long straightaways here at New Hampshire, so corner exit is very important. You don't want to be overdriving it like I did right there, but you don't want to be underdriving it and giving up time. Just find that limit, know where the grip is, know how hard you can push your car. And if you use this framework of understanding how different aspects of the track can relate to grip, you'll definitely find more speed as you practice these tracks. So let's look at my qualifying run hot laps, and we'll wrap this video up. Alright, here we go for my qualifying runs here at New Hampshire. Again, these cars have not gotten to this track yet as I'm recording this, so these times may not be perfectly the best, but it's still important to see an approach to how to drive these corners. So braking pretty deep into the corner, then really aggressive on corner exit with the diamond double apex approach. You have multiple clipping points in the center of the corner as far as where you want to go low on the track. Notice I stay on the second groove because that first line is less banking, so there's less grip down there. thing about racing these tracks is then racing like a series like the ARCA cars, and as you move up into the trucks and even Xfinity cars and beyond, you'll need to learn how to drive a bunch of different tracks. So it's important to develop a methodology of learning how to drive them, and learning where you can improve your lines by having clipping points for and reference points for corner entry, center, and exit, and different general approaches to these corners. New Hampshire isn't like Chicagoland or Iowa where it's very flowy. It's really about getting through the corner and getting to corner exit for these very long straightaways. There's very little banking, so you really gotta know how to control the car. Don't let it slide up the track because there's not much physical surface to hold you. That'll do it for me today. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more of these iRacing videos. This is a bit more of an intermediate beginner tip, more intermediate than beginner. Definitely watch if you have not watched them already, please watch my beginner tips on car control and driving inputs and cornering. Those videos are very important to understand what you need to be doing for learning these tracks and getting speed and controlling your car so you don't wreck anybody. Again, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you on the track.